morning session, and then Brigham Young spoke in the afternoon session during the sacrament, actually, which was interesting. So in the afternoon, they had the sacrament, Brigham Young spoke, and then he had Orson Pratt read the Revelation, and that was the end of the conference. So this is what the main thing I wanted to focus on. The rest of it was just kind of like, for your information, this is where the real crux of the matter is that was really important to me and profound to teach me. So in his talk, and he also said a lot of things, but I just want to focus on a couple of things. He made some very bold declarations and prophecies in the name of the Lord. So as the president of the church stood up at the pulpit in conference and prophesied. And okay, so first of all, I'm just going to read this part. It's a little bit long, but I think it's important to know what it was that, I want you to be able to hear Brigham Young's words. So he says, sorry, I have to find it. Okay, this is Brigham Young. You heard Brother Pratt state this morning that a revelation would be read this afternoon, which was given previous to Joseph's death. It contains a doctrine a small portion of the world is opposed to, but I can deliver a prophecy upon it. Though that doctrine has not been preached by the elders, this people have believed in it for many years. The original copy of this revelation was burnt up. William Clayton was the man who wrote it from the mouth of the prophet. In the meantime, it was in Bishop Whitney's possession. He wished the privilege to copy it, which Brother Joseph granted. Sister Emma burnt the original. The reason why I mention this is because that the people who did know of the revelation suppose it was not now in existence. So this was a huge surprise. Like he said, my understanding is that anyone who did know or hear that there was a revelation on marriage knew it had been destroyed. So it didn't exist anymore. And all of a sudden he's, ta-da! So the revelation will be read to you. The principles spoken upon by Brother Pratt this morning we believe in. And I tell you, for I know it, it will sail over and ride triumphantly above the prejudices and priestcraft of the day. He's talking about polygamy. It will be fostered and believed in by the more intelligent portions of the world as one of the best doctrines ever proclaimed to any people. Your hearts need not beat. You need not think that a mob is coming here to tread upon the sacred liberty which the Constitution of our country guarantees unto us, for it will not be. The world has known long ago, even in Joseph's days, that we had more wives than one. One of the senators in Congress knew it very well. Did he oppose it? No, but he has been our friend all the day long, especially upon this subject. He said pointedly to his friends, and now he's telling us what apparently this senator said to his friends, because he knows it somehow. He said to his friends, if the United States do not adopt that very method, let them continue as they now are, pursue the precise course they are now pursuing, and it will come to this, that their generations will not live until they are 30 years old. They are going to destruction. Disease is spreading so fast among the inhabitants of the United States that they are born rotten with it, and in a few years they are gone. Said he, Joseph has introduced the very best plan for restoring and establishing strength and long life among men, of any man on the earth, and the Mormons are a very good and virtuous people. So that's apparently what the senator told his friends. Many others are of the same mind. They are not ignorant of what we are doing in our social capacity. They have cried out, proclaim it, but it would not do a few years ago. Even everything must come in its time. As there is a time to all things, I am now ready to proclaim it. This revelation has been in my possession many years, and who has known it? None but those who should know it. I keep a patent lock on my desk, and there does not anything leak out that should not. It pleases me a little to think how anxious this people are for new revelation, and he goes on from there. So, he's kind of chuckling at himself that he's had this good joke. And so there are so many things about the claims that he makes here that we could go into. I don't want to focus on those too much because, again, it just gets messy and it would take a whole lot of time that we don't want to spend right now. So those are the claims he made. And the thing I really want to focus on, though, that I do want to get into, and that should be, it's crystal clear for everybody to see, so should be free from all controversy, that I think is the most important part of this, of the entire story of 132, are the prophecies. So there are a couple of different prophecies we're going to talk about. So first, we'll start with Brigham Young's prophecies. So Brigham Young stood at the podium and declared that he could, quote, deliver a prophecy upon it, meaning upon polygamy and the saints living polygamy. This was his prophecy about the principle of polygamy. Here it is. I tell you, for I know it, it will sail over and ride triumphantly above all the prejudice and priestcraft of the day. It will be fostered and believed in by the more intelligent portions of the world as one of the best doctrines ever proclaimed to any people. Okay, so that was his first prophecy. So it is clear to say that prophecy was not fulfilled. In fact, the exact opposite came about. So less than 2 years later, after this prophecy, the Republican Party of the United States was formed, Abraham Lincoln's party, under the banner of rooting out the twin relics of barbarism, polygamy and slavery. Polygamy came first in the order. So, okay, so there's just one example of how opposite what actually happened was to what Brigham Young prophesied. So he continues his prophecy. He goes on to say, your hearts need not beat. You need not think that a mob is coming here to tread upon the sacred liberty which the Constitution of our country guarantees us, for it will not be. Okay, well, an entire army came. So my husband and I just took our youngest children to Camp Floyd in I guess it's Southwest Utah County, and learned more about that. We just happened to do that. So I was thankful that we did, but we learned it was the largest army in America. It was America's largest army that had been assembled was sent to Utah. The Camp Floyd, where they were housed in their tents and, they built permanent buildings, it immediately became the third largest city in Utah. The Utah War, they shall not come here, the burying, all of that. So not only did just a mob came, but an entire army came. So he then goes on, and this gets even more interesting because he prophesies destruction upon the United States if they don't adopt polygamy. Destruction is an interesting word. It's in 132 in some interesting ways, and here Brigham Young, and then it's in some other places that we're going to talk about right now. So he prophesies destruction. He says, if the United States do not adopt that very method, let them continue as they are now, pursue the precise course they are now pursuing, and it will come to this, that their generations will not live until they are 30 years old. They are going to destruction. Disease is spreading so fast among the inhabitants of the United States that they are born rotten with it, and a few years they are gone. So, okay. So there's another prophecy. And I will say, in fairness, the United States did nearly face destruction not very long after that with the Civil War. But it was not because they did not adopt polygamy. It was because they did not forsake slavery. They had another critical moral wrong that God doesn't want on this land, I believe. And so just as slavery brought the U.S. to the brink of destruction until they finally gave it up, polygamy brought the church to the brink of destruction until they finally gave it up. So contrary to what Brigham Young prophesied, the church did not flourish with polygamy. They barely survived. Sorry, I just lost my place, this silly screen. So I just wanted to get my list that I compiled, but let's see. So there were other things that happened, but here's just a little list that I thought of. So church leaders were forced into hiding. Many of them were imprisoned. Many men were imprisoned. Many polygamists were forced to leave the United States. So they did again have to flee their homes. That's my grandparents that went to Mexico. The church, as this progressed, the church lost complete control of the government. They lost most of their holdings and properties. The church faced complete destruction to the point that in 1891, Wilford Woodruff delivered sermons at state conferences. I read these first, the actual reports of them, but they are now canonized. Some of his talks are canonized in Official Declaration 1 in the Doctrine and Covenants. So I just want to read part of this. You can go look it up in Official Declaration 1 in the Doctrine and Covenants. He asks the saints and says that this was an inspired question that the Lord told him to ask him. Which is the wisest counsel for the Latter-day Saints to pursue? To continue to attempt to practice plural marriage with the laws of the nation against it and the opposition of 60 millions of people. So remember what Brigham Young prophesied, that everybody would see it as the best doctrine ever taught. And at the cost of the confiscation and loss of all the temples, and the stopping of all the ordinances therein, both for the living and the dead, and the imprisonment of the first presidency and 12, and the heads of families in the church, and the confiscation of personal property of the people, all of which of themselves would stop the practice, or after doing and suffering what we have through our adherence to this principle, to cease the practice and submit to the law, and through doing so leave the prophets, apostles, and fathers at home so that they can instruct the people and attend to the duties of the church, and also leave the temples in the hands of the saints so that they can attend to the ordinances of the gospel for both living and dead. The Lord showed me by vision and revelation exactly what would take place if we did not stop this practice. If we had not stopped it, all ordinances would be stopped throughout the land of Zion. Confusion would reign throughout Israel, and many men would be made prisoners. This trouble would have come upon the whole church, and we should have been compelled to stop. We should have been compelled to stop the practice. Now, the question is whether it should be stopped in this manner or in the way the Lord has manifested to us, and leave our prophets and apostles and fathers free men, and the temples in the hands of the people, so that the dead may be redeemed. So this is so interesting. So again, that word confusion will reign. And the Lord made it clear to Wilford Woodruff, that if the saints did not forsake polygamy, they would be destroyed. So Brigham Young's prophecies were completely the opposite of what actually happened. But the most important part of this to me is the prophecies that did come true. So hopefully you'll recognize this. For there shall not any man among you have, save it be one wife, and concubines he shall have none. Jacob 2:27, skipping down to 29. Wherefore this people shall keep my commandments, referring specifically to this commandment to have one wife, saith the Lord of hosts, or cursed be the land for their sakes. For they shall not lead away, this is verse 33, they shall not lead away captive the daughters of my people because of their tenderness, save I shall visit them with a sore curse, even unto destruction. And then over in chapter 3, verse 3, for except ye repent, the land is cursed for your sakes. So Jacob, clear back in the beginning of the establishment of this land, prophesied that people who lived polygamy on this land would be destroyed until they repented and forsook it. And that is exactly what happened. So if we want to get to the Lord's truth, to the truth of what happened, we need to, I think the prophecies are the best way to get there. We're told, by their fruits ye shall know them. Which teachings on polygamy proved to be true? Those given by Brigham Young or those given by the Lord through the prophet Jacob? It's pretty clear. Brigham Young prophesied that those who didn't practice polygamy in the United States would face destruction, but the exact opposite happened. Jacob prophesied that any people of God who did practice polygamy on this land would face destruction unless and until they repented and stopped living it. That is exactly what happened. So that's the point that really got me, where I'm like, okay, where is God? It's pretty clear to me where the truth of God is in this. And so now I know this is challenging, right? So I want to clarify something. I don't want you to hear this episode simply as criticism of Brigham Young. That is not my intent at all. I actually, as I was reading through this, there was one sermon in particular that he gave that was so beautiful and touching. And I even shared it online because it just was like, oh, thank you for letting me see the good side, like this beautiful. He talked about the immigrants coming, the new converts coming into the valley after their long and difficult journey. And he asked the members in just such beautiful, compassionate terms to put themselves in the shoes of these weary travelers and ask themselves how they would want to be greeted when they were so impoverished and exhausted and hungry. And said, and told them, make your gardens and your homes open to them. Tell them to help themselves and to share in all of your abundance. And it really touched me. It was such a beautiful expression of true religion and of pure religion and true charity. And so I loved that. And I don't want in any way to just be judgmental and condemn or throw Brigham Young and us or Orson Pratt under the bus or claim they were all bad or, that we should judge them. I just, again, feel so deeply the truth of Moroni's plea in Mormon 9:31. I think this is so pertinent, where he says, "Condemn me not because of mine imperfection, neither my Father because of his imperfection, neither them who have written before him. But rather give thanks unto God that he hath made manifest unto you our imperfections, that ye may learn to be more wise than we have been." If Mormon and Moroni, the compilers and keepers of the Nephite records and the final prophets of God in their dispensation, were capable of error, anybody is capable of error. And instead of thinking in black and white terms like we can't see error among any leaders of the church, or if there was error among leaders of the church, then throw it all out. I just don't think that it has to be one of those two extremes. I think we can look at it and think how blessed we are that we now have the tools and the ability to see more clearly and to see some of those errors. And rather than condemning those who made those errors, we can avoid making those errors ourselves. So I just think it's important that we don't continue to be deceived and we don't judge harshly, but that we instead just be willing and humble enough to see our false traditions for what they are, so that we can be more wise and avoid deception and confusion for ourselves. That's my purpose in doing this, and I hope that it is accomplishing that for those of you who are taking the time to listen. I again want to thank you for tuning in and sticking with me. I think the more people involved in these conversations, the better. So if any of you feel inclined to share, please go ahead and do that. And join me next time. We will be tackling Isaiah 4:1 and other biblical justifications for polygamy. And I think after that, we'll get to the big, hairy one that I've kind of been putting off. So we have some other big, important episodes coming. So please stick with us. Again, thank you for being here. My name is Michelle Stone, and this is 132 Problems.